Welcome to our webinar on upgrading the FDA Adverse Event Reporting System presented by Amarex and NSF International Company. The focus would be to provide some information about pre- and post-marketing safety requirements. I'm Shide Badri, Senior Vice President of Safety and Pharmacovigilance. I have over 20 years of experience in medical practice and clinical research. I've managed so many clinical safety, pharmacovigilance, coding, and medical monitoring activities for over 60 clinical trials, phase 1 to phase 4 studies. By education, I'm a physician. I've been a postdoctoral research fellow before joining Amarex, and I've been with Amarex for more than 10 years now. The main responsibilities of Amarex Safety and Pharmacovigilance Department are medical monitoring, serious adverse event reporting and processing, and medical coding activities based on Food Drug and MedDRA Dictionary. Amarex Safety and Pharmacovigilance Department has experience in conducting or being included in more than 130 projects with indications such as oncology, pain management, respiratory, rheumatology, wound healing, and the rest of the list are present here. Amarex Clinical Research is a full-service CRO that can provide all operational and consulting activities with regard to pharmaceutical companies and medical device companies with regard to their investigational products. The learning objectives of this webinar are the following: describe key elements of ICH E2B R3 and its regional elements for both pre- and post-marketing safety surveillance, and those are per the ICH E2B R3 guidelines, and also learn about electronic submission of IND safety reports in FDA Adverse Event Reporting System, learn about the tools that stakeholders can use to submit IND safety reports to FAERS directly using electronic submission in the future. And then, because we are in COVID-19 pandemic, I added 3 slides about updates about pre- and post-marketing safety assessment during COVID-19 pandemic based on the FDA guidelines just published during late March 2020. The first topic is ICH E2B R3 key elements for pre- and post-marketing safety surveillance, and I'm going to only talk about a few important key elements, and I highly encourage everyone to go to the related guidelines and get the information from there. So it's very important for the audience to know about ICSR, individual case safety report. Why is that necessary and how do we use it? Just a little bit background about ICSR. ICSR is a report of information describing adverse event or reaction experienced by an individual patient. And because there are a large number of potential participants in a worldwide exchange of information, it's very important to have a standard format that is capable of accommodating direct database to database transmission using a standardized message transfers. Successful electronic submissions of information relies on the consistent and uniform interpretation of definitions for common data elements and standard transmission procedures that are also provided in the ICH E2B R3 guideline. Just a little bit about the history or timeline of the ICH E2B guideline and the development of it. The first ICH E2B guideline was developed and published on July 17, 1997. It was modified in November 2000 and then published with some minor editorial changes in February 2001 as the ICH Step 4 E2B guideline. It was retitled as the E2B R2 guideline in May 2005, and E2B R3 guideline was finally published in 2006. The FDA E2B R3 guideline was published in February 2014. There are advantages to electronic submissions for both pre-marketing and post-marketing. Electronic submission can improve the ability to efficiently exchange and process ICSR data between different organizations and stakeholders. It can facilitate the transmission of information to organizations who need it. It will enable incoming messages to be automatically routed and processed, and also facilitates aggregation of safety data for analysis because all information can be in one integrated database and allows minimizing resources required for data entry activities and minimizes the errors as the data entry activities. ICH E2B R3 specifications for the transmission of ICSRs are the following. Any safety and pharmacovigilance subject matter expert can name all of these elements. These are 4 important elements that one ICSR should contain to be considered as a valid ICSR. There should be one identifiable patient, and that can be defined as initials, age, and sex. One identifiable reported. Any one of several data elements is considered sufficient to define an identifiable reporter, such as initial, address, qualifications. There should be one adverse event or reaction or outcome or problem error, and also one suspect or interacting drug. Please note that these are ICH E2B R3 specification that is present in the ICH guideline. There might be additional validation rules for the required minimal information at the regional level, for example, in each country, based on each country's regulatory agency. There are, in addition to the minimum information that I just mentioned, there are other ICH E2B R3 specifications for the transmission of ICSRs. The most important one is Sender Safety Report Unique Identifier. The type of report is also very important. Data of most recent information for this report, the date of most recent information for the report. Does this case fulfill the local criteria for an expedited report? Worldwide unique case identification, if applicable, reporter's country code, sender's organization, and the type of the report. And the elements in the parentheses are referred to the guideline that you can see on my last 2 slides about resources and references. The key data elements, this is another slide based on the ICH E2B R3 guideline. We talked about both Section A and Section B elements, and also there are more information in the guideline. On Section B, you can see that we have patient characteristic, reaction or event, result of tests and procedures relevant to the investigation of the patient, and drugs information. The date and time format based on ICH E2B R3 guideline is the following. You can see these letters, and each of these have its own definition, and you can find the information in Appendix 2. There is also an example about how to use the date. If you look at the MedWatch report or FDA Form 3500A, you can find that the instructions also encourage the reporters to actually do the date and time based on this format. There is another point to mention, and that's about the use of MEDRA for ICSR reporting. MEDRA is the medical dictionary for regulatory affairs, and as you all know, LLP, lowest level term, is the one that is most closely to the corresponding to the event or reaction, and that needs to be used for ICSR reporting. That's requirement for all data elements required for MEDRA coding. Please refer to MEDRA term selection points to consider, and you can find very useful information on MSSO website, and there are so many guidelines and resources available there. Please note that only one version of MEDRA can be used to code the relevant data elements within a single ICSR. If there are multiple data elements in one ICSR, please use only one version of MEDRA and not just code one term based on one MedDRA version and another term based on another MedDRA version. Multiple ICSRs can be submitted in the single batch, and if you do that, that's okay for different ICSR to have different MedDRA versions. Just within one ICSR, you want to only code the terms based on the LLT for only one version of MedDRA. Please, for more information, refer to E2B R3 electronic transmission of individual case safety reports, and that's the useful implementation guide that pharmaceutical companies or stakeholders, third parties, vendors such as CROs can use, and their IT and programming department can use on the data elements and message specification, and can transform their safety tracking system software to be compliant with E2B R3 guideline. The next topic is FDA regional implementation of ICH E2B R3. The FDA regional implementation of ICH E2B R3 is actually a separate guideline. The specifications comply with ICH E2B R3 conformance criteria. ICH elements accept regionally controlled terminology without compromising ICH E2B R3 conformance criteria. There are two examples of FDA regional data collected in one of the sections, such as FDA race and FDA ethnic group. And please note that there are two Excel files on the FDA website that you can find, and if there are any regional implementation of the E2BR3 element, those regional implementation, the definitions starts with the word FDA. So you would be able to identify them by filtering the Excel files, and for the FDA regional implementation to be able to identify those fields. Please note that ICH E2B R3 fields are the mandatory fields, and ICH regional data, some of them are mandatory and are highly recommended, and the other are optional. You can find also the information about race and ethnic group. Those are updated information. Also, you can find updated information about gender on MedWatch form, which is used for submitting expedited reports, either post-marketing or pre-marketing safety reports. FDA supports the recommendation of the ICH E2B R3 concerning the use of MedDRA, the lowest level term, throughout the MedWatch report or IND safety report or any kind of submission. Identification of the case safety report is also another important topic, and we are going to mention that during the rest of this presentation as well. Each initial report should have a sender's or case safety report unique identifier, which also can be found as manufacturer control number, MCN, listed in box G9 of FDA form 3500A, which is the MedWatch form. That unique identification number is very important because all subsequent follow-up ICSRs should be submitted using that unique identifier that was used for initial reporting. It's very important if within the organization follow-up reports of one initially reported term is reassigned to another number, then that's per that organization's practice. For the FDA submission or regulatory agency submission, the organization should always refer to the FAERS to the FAERS safety report unique identifier number that was used for reporting the initial report, because regulatory agencies should be able to have a link between initial and subsequent follow-up ICSRs. Another topic is electronic submissions of post-marketing safety reports. Before going to that topic, I'm going to mention that again to please go to the guideline for the regional elements for the FDA, and also you can find the Excel files that FDA provided, and that's public information, and that can be used by any IT or data operation department around the globe to make sure that the database-to-database transfers for electronic submissions of safety reports are compliant with ICH E2B R3. We are doing the same thing at Amarex Safety and Pharmacovigilance Department so that our system is ready for R3, although it's not yet mandated by the FDA. About the electronic submission of post-marketing safety report, the guideline is effective since June 10, 2015. There are parts of ICSR submissions, and every safety and pharmacovigilance subject matter expert can identify that. These are the ICSR itself and ICSR attachments such as hospital notes, autopsy reports, discharge summary, or any other related notes such as lab results, imaging information, and those kind of documents. Also, follow-up ICSRs should provide a complete picture of the current understanding of an adverse drug experience. So when any organization wants to submit a follow-up information to an initially submitted ICSR, it's very important to provide the full picture of the current adverse drug reaction rather than providing only the changes and or updates to an ICSR. What we do at Amarex Safety and Pharmacovigilance, we actually submit follow-up ICSRs with complete information, and we highlight or some kind of make sure that they are identifiable by the FDA reviewer, the updated information that we provide in the follow-up ICSR so that they can be easily identified. But still, we include all of the information that were present in the initial report if they have not been changed. Options for the ICSR submissions. There are two options for electronic submission of ICSRs to FAERS right now. One is through Electronic Submissions Gateway or ESG, and that would facilitate the direct database-to-database submission based on ICH E2B guidelines. And the other is using the safety reporting portal, and with that, that's a web-based, it's a portal that you can log in and do CSR data entry manually and then generate the information, and both of these go to FAERS database. For each of these submissions, the person who is submitting the information would receive multiple acknowledgement about each of these electronic submissions. And these are explained in the guideline, and we also follow these guidelines at Amarex Safety and Pharmacovigilance Department. As I mentioned, the unique case identification number for initial and follow-up ICSRs are very important, and those are used for avoiding duplicate ICSRs in the FAERS database. When you use ESG, always use unique case identification number for the initial ICSR and any follow-up ICSRs, and don't change that. When you use SRP, you can use logging into the SRP, find the ICSR record, and modify or add to the initial ICSR to create a follow-up submission and submit as many follow-up reports as necessary. As I mentioned, both of these are linked to the FDA adverse event reporting system. Now I want to talk about a little bit about electronic submissions of IND safety reports in FDA adverse event reporting system, the upgraded one. It's called FAERS2, and this is a requirement that is for the future, but I thought it's very useful to have the information now or talk about it today, and I think that would be probably the most important part of this webinar. Just a little bit information about the IND safety reporting requirements. These are the items that are required to be submitted to the regulatory agency as an IND safety report if there is a serious and unexpected adverse reaction, whether it can be individual occurrence, one or more occurrences, or aggregate analysis of the specific events. Findings from other sources, such as other studies, animal or in vitro testing, also can be reported as an IND safety report if those meet the definition for IND safety reporting. Also, increased occurrence of serious suspected adverse reactions should be submitted as an IND safety reporting, and that's the sponsors or pharmaceutical companies or medical device companies to make sure about identifying those increased occurrence of serious suspected adverse reactions and evaluate them to see if they meet the criteria for IND safety reporting submission. Submitting an IND safety report or types of IND reports. IND safety report for 15-day reports, that's for the suspected, unexpected, serious adverse reaction. The follow-up IND safety reports follows the same timeline most of the time. And then we have 7-day IND safety report that are for suspected, unexpected, serious adverse reactions that are fatal or life-threatening adverse reactions. The format of the report for individual cases are FDA Form 3500A or MedWatch Form or SIAMS Form 1. Aggregate reports and other reports from other resources can be submitted in a narrative format. For the submissions, for any, first of all, this is a very important topic that submissions should be done to all of the INDs under which the drug is being administered. So that's a very important information. And then there are also very useful information as appendix to one of the FDA guidelines how to do the cross reporting between INDs. So I highly encourage everyone to make sure that their safety and pharmacovigilance organization is aware of that guideline. Electronic submission of 15-day IND safety reports should be in ECTD format, if applicable, if that's in ECTD format. For the 7-day IND safety reports, it's highly preferred to submit in ECTD format. But if the IND itself is not in ECTD format for rapid communication, you can use telephone, plasma transmission, email, or other means of transmission because those are the fatal serious problems or life-threatening, serious adverse reactions. For the current practice, for the FDA, FDA actually requires the sponsors of commercial INDs that make electronic IND safety report submission to use ECTD format. And the problem with the current practice is that reviewing and tracking of these reports in PDF format sometimes is inefficient, and also it's labor intensive because the information is kind of all over in the place. They are not linked together. The solution is that to find a way to submit IND safety reports to FAERS as a structured data elements that would improve FDA's ability to review and track potential safety signals that occur during the conduct of clinical trials, that also provides sponsors with a reporting format that is consistent with ICH E2B. And that's very important also for the sponsors that are concerned and should be concerned about patient safety, because now with electronic submission, all information about pre-marketing and post-marketing will be in one integrated database, which is ICH E2B compliant. That would be really helpful with exchanging of the data between multiple stakeholders and do a more efficient review of signal on trends and consider those for label changing and even do more aggressive actions such as removing a product from the market and those kind of actions that you can find in the regulations. The general remarks that I have to mention again is that this requirement for IND safety reporting as electronic submission is not effective now, will be effective 24 months after the publication of the final guidance. Before the effective date, FDA will accept IND safety reports to FDA Adverse Event Reporting System as part of a voluntary submission program, but that timeline has not been communicated yet. And until then, the most recent effective version of the ECTD guidance should be considered for the sponsors to submit IND safety reports for any of the suspected, unexpected, serious adverse reactions. So types of electronic submissions of safety IND safety reports to FAERS are the first three ones that are mentioned in this slide. The individual occurrences, one or more occurrences, and aggregate analysis of a specific event. The rest of the items, such as findings from other sources, other studies, animal or in vitro testing, and if there are increased occurrences of serious suspected adverse reactions, those would still be submitted in eCTD format. So this is very important to be noted as well. The tools for submission of IND safety reports to FAERS would be the same as post-marketing, using ESG or SRP. For each of these, you can refer to the website or to the guidelines to know about the information. But the rest of the information would be pretty much the same for both post-marketing and pre-marketing. About the pre-submission consideration, for the first time, if you submit to FDA Adverse Event Reporting System, please contact Electronic Submission Coordinator so that she or he can guide you. But for the subsequent IND safety reports, there is no need to contact the FAE or contact the FDA Adverse Event Reporting System Coordinator. For the waiver request, that's possible if there is a disaster or internet disruption or any other extraordinary events. That those kind of waiver requests can be done for post-marketing and for certain, pre-marketing IND safety reports in the FAERS, but that should be communicated with both with the FDA. Please note that this requirement is for CDER and CBER, and CDER of the FDA is actually coordinating and overseeing all of the activities. So these guidelines are for the investigational drugs or the post-marketed products for CBER and CDER. This is not applicable to, for example, vaccines or blood products or some certain type of medical devices. So please note all of these requirements. And because we are in COVID-19 pandemic, I was thinking to include just 2 or 3 slides about pre- and post-marketing safety assessment during COVID-19 pandemic based on the guidelines that the FDA published in March 2020. About the clinical trial safety assessment, there are useful information in the FDA guidelines that those how to do safety assessment during COVID-19 pandemic, because as you all know, it's very important to ensure about the safety of trial participants. So please consider modifying the study conduct if needed. It's very important to keep trial participants informed of changes to the study and monitoring plans. Evaluate whether alternative methods for safety assessments can be implemented, such as phone contact, virtual visit, alternative location for assessment. If COVID-19 screening procedures do not need to be reported, is not going to be used, the data of it, they do not need to be reported as an amendment to the protocol. But if you want to use the data, please make sure that you do protocol amendment and then be in close communication with IRB and ethics committee with regard to those, urgent or emergent changes to the protocol. And of course, documenting all of these efforts are very important because you want to make sure that all of these changes that are done during the COVID-19 pandemic are recorded properly for the future references and submissions. For post-marketing, there is a very good guideline that was published by the FDA in late March, and basically, and these 2 slides are 2 slides about based on the tables that are included at the end of the guidelines. And the conclusion of this is that if you have a fatal or life-threatening serious injury or problem for any of the type of products or application, please continue to submit them per the regulations to the regulatory agencies. But if you have other types of reports, such as 15-day alert report or any other kind of report that are considered non-fatal serious injury, you can actually store if necessary and then submit later per the FDA direction or using annual report. So I highly encourage everyone to actually have a good understanding of the post-marketing safety assessment during COVID-19 pandemic and allocate resources as needed. And I mentioned earlier in my presentation that I have 2 slides about resources from FAERS website and my references. I highly encourage everyone to review these slides, and I highly encourage everyone to start implementing ICH E2B R3 requirements if you have not initiated that yet, because those are very important, and especially for the IND safety reports are going to be in effect within 2 years from now. Thank you for participating in this webinar. If you have any question, please feel free to email me at shideb@amarexcro.com. And I have a few questions that I'm going to respond right now. The first question is that, is there a confirmed date as to when these changes to FAERS will go into effect? The answer is that currently we don't have any confirmed date. Originally, it was mentioned that the date will be around June or July 2022. However, this date is not finalized, and the date will be actually 2 years after the related guideline is finalized. I mentioned that during my presentation. Another question is that, is it possible to begin electronic submission of IND safety reports now? The FDA is working on making this possible, and they will announce it once the system is ready, approximately 1 month prior to that. So that would be voluntary submission, and it was supposed to start in March 2020, but still it's not yet, the date is not yet published. And I have a last question. When should stakeholders start making upgrades in their safety system based on ICH E2B R3? As I mentioned, it's highly suggested to start these efforts right now if you have not started already. This is very important to make sure that your safety tracking system software, or if you use any customized or commercialized one, those are compliant with ICH E2B R3 guideline, so that there can be a homogeneity between the different resources, and the database to database transfers can actually occur with no issue. Again, thank you for listening to this webinar, and if you have any questions, please feel free to email me at shideb@amarexcro.com. Thank you so much.